Welcome to the Kalra Legal Group Podcast. My name is Anita Kalra. I'm the Managing Director of Kalra Legal Group and Senior Employment Law Solicitor. And today we're going to talk about employment law for startups. This is a really important topic, and actually so many startups struggle with this. So let's get going. What do you think are the most important things that we get asked, especially from startup owners?
Probably about employment contracts. I think that's the first thing we always get asked. When do I need to have a contract in place? And the answer is always the same, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time they come to us with dodgy contracts, ChatGPT contracts. We've seen loads of those, haven't we?
Yeah, we've seen.
Quite common at the moment, unfortunately, isn't it? Where actually we're getting contracts being sent to us and they've been drafted via ChatGPT. What do you think are the biggest pitfalls that we notice in these contracts that have been drafted by an AI tool like ChatGPT?
I think anything like notices, really important.
Yeah.
How much notice both employer and employee need to give, holidays, also restrictive covenants. I think that's so important to protect a business in terms of, let's say, for example, non-solicitation clause.
Yeah.
So important to protect the business. And I think those are the key things that are missing, especially when an employee does leave the organisation or company.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, we had a client recently that unfortunately didn't have any restrictive covenants in their contract, and they were in the healthcare industry. And what that meant was they were able to go and replicate the business and go and work somewhere else and take that team with them. Unfortunately, they couldn't do anything about it because there was no restrictive covenants in that contract. Again, that contract was most probably just downloaded from the internet and not checked by a legal professional. What do we see are the main things that should be in a contract of employment?
I think it's just the key fundamental terms. And I think, to be honest, a lot of those, yes, you can get them off a template from ChatGPT, but it's missing those finer details that only a legal professional will be able to tell you, like the non-solicitation clauses.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably wouldn't even know what that is, or they wouldn't think to put that into the ChatGPT program.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing these issues that are unfolding, like you just mentioned, from that client of ours. So it's a big problem.
Yeah, 100%. And actually not many startups understand this, but you do have to provide an employment contract either before day one of employment or on day one. It used to be within 8 weeks, but that has changed. It has to be either before the employee starts or on day one of employment. And actually, talking about employees, we see various contracts and different status of employment. How should employers deal with that?
I think, again, it comes back to just getting contracts drafted professionally. If they're not drafted professionally, then it's very easy for them to be the wrong type of employment status, which puts different rights or doesn't give them different rights, and then it just creates further problems down the line when they're leaving and there's issues at work, which inevitably will happen with at least a percentage of the workforce.
Yeah, 100%. Because there are differences between status of employment. So there's employee status, worker status, and self-employed status. So you're completely right.
It's really easy to grey the lines between them.
Yeah.
Even we've seen the case law. Sometimes it's impossible to see what the reality of it all is until you've actually sort of looking at the finer details. And I think unless you've read those cases and you've sort of kept up to date with the changes over and how it's evolved over the years, it's impossible for a lay person just to see it and be like, oh, that's an employee, that's a self-employed contractor, that's a worker. It's a very grey area, and it's really difficult.
Yeah, I think that's just establishes the importance of taking that advice, because it could very well be that you've taken on a worker to start with, but during the course of employment over a couple of years, that employment has transpired to be an employee status.
Yeah, especially with startups.
Yeah.
Especially with startups. I dealt with a contract or a client, obviously I won't go into detail, but they started off as just an entry-level worker, and they ended up being sort of at a manager level within that team as the startup grew. It was a tech startup, I think. So if that contract hasn't been updated properly, they did have the proper contracts in place. You could tell they were legally drafted. But if they weren't, then that person who's sort of could be earning six figures at a high level now versus when they started, it wouldn't necessarily reflect the real relationship of things. So it's really, really important to keep it not only in place at the start, but up to date throughout the throughout the working relationship.
Yeah, that's a really important point actually that you've made, because during the course of someone's employment, their job description might change, their responsibilities may change. So they may have joined the organisation on a more junior level and progress, but then their contract may remain as a junior contract rather than an enhanced senior contract level. And again, salary, benefits, restrictive covenants may change as well during the course of employment. So making sure that contracts are updated on a regular basis, I definitely would say is one of the biggest pitfalls that we see.
Yeah.
I think it's a good reference for employers as well as employees. I always say that contracts and even handbooks are kind of a Bible for both employer and employee, where if one is confused or they don't know, what the notice is, or they're confused about how to, let's say, raise a grievance as well, sometimes contracts have those clauses. So it's a good tool, let's say, and a good document for both employer and employee to refer to if they're going through any kind of issues within the workplace.
Sure.
Yeah, and I love how you've mentioned that the handbook is like a Bible for a business. And where do we see the major pitfalls with employment contracts and handbooks? So I think from my perspective, sometimes we have startups that come to us and they don't actually even have any policies and procedures in place. Mm-hmm. So they don't actually know what their process is. So to start with, when you take on an employee, you may have a probation period, which could be 3 months to 6 months, but they don't know how to exercise that probation period because there is no policy in place. So the most basic thing you can do is to have a handbook in place, which Rafni rightly said is like a Bible, because that's what you would follow during the startup phase. And that handbook may change during the course of your business. But to start with, they should be the two things that you make sure you have in place as a contract and an employee handbook.
Yeah, and I mean, how many businesses have you worked with from startup as they've grown? And it's always the businesses that have the handbooks in place in the first place, and that are conscious of the policies and procedures that they, as they scale up, that have worked really well. And you can see that they actually care about their employees, and they want to make sort of the right changes in the workplace. And you see that growth sort of go with the business, not only in terms of their own business, but with the employees as well.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah, and I think every business is so unique in their own way. You have care industries, and then you also have, let's say, if you're running a restaurant, your policies and procedures are going to be completely different. Yeah. So it's just having that bespoke handbook, ensuring that as a business you're also compliant. Let's say from a regulator's point of view as well. I think that's so important to have in a handbook. And again, going back to my point before, if there's any issues, and maybe an employee is confused as to what's needed from an employee's perspective as well, they can also refer to the handbook. I think it's a great guide for both.
Yeah, and actually we've seen where we've had handbooks being sent to us where we're reviewing them, and they've all been template handbooks, all from the same provider. Yeah. So they look exactly the same. Yeah, identical.
And they're not tailored, like you said, to that business's industry. For example, you mentioned regulated businesses. They often need extra policies in place, safeguarding policies and things like that. Or you mentioned sort of other types of businesses like restaurant businesses, and I know we hate talking about tips and trunk and the way the laws change there, but it's definitely important, because if that's not in place properly, then it affects all aspects of the business, really. Yeah. Worker retention.
Exactly.
And everything else, really.
And it's a difficult piece of legislation for hospitality sector to digest. So if you don't have a policy in place, you're not going to be able to explain that to your team. And that's like another level then, isn't it, really, when you have that policy in place, but you're able to explain to your senior managers as you grow how that policy should be enforced and how it should be utilised for the benefit of the team.
Stuff like that, ultimately, that's what employees want to know about. And if the people within the business can't explain that, then there's going to be so many issues, and it's going to keep flowing through the business. Then you start getting into grievances and other issues, and it just becomes a nightmare for a business, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
I think on the same note, a lot of the clients that I speak to, they're unaware of where they can actually find the employee handbook. So I think that's another thing that employers should focus on is ensuring that their employees are aware of, whether it's on a portal or whether it's a hard copy, it's easy accessible for them.
No, that's a really valid point, actually, because sometimes handbooks are updated and there's not enough transparency then in that organisation that it's been updated, or you're trying to find a particular policy. So that's a good note.
Yeah, and I think something that we often do is we signpost the key policies, don't we, in terms of on the contents page. We did it for one client recently where it was like the most frequently accessed policies. So that, okay, the handbook might be 100 or 200 pages, and then you've got sort of 5 key policies like holidays or sickness, stuff that people really care about ultimately.
Yeah.
And they're just sort of signposted. They can go straight to them. And again, the business knows what they are, and so do the individuals.
Yeah, because these handbooks are long.
Yeah, they're really long, some of them. And of course, businesses don't like it, but ultimately, it's, like I said, it's like a Bible for them to access. And even the most sort of one-off type of inquiries you receive, the answers in the handbook.
Yeah.
Stuff to do with jury service and retirement policies and everything should be in that handbook so that it's all very transparent and clear.
100%, yeah. And data protection and all those more complex policies that you need to have in place. I think as well, once the business is in a startup phase, once it starts progression, in the progression period, and you're over 2 years, what do we see as the kind of most common pitfalls at that point?
I think it comes back to not updating everything, to be honest. I think it's just sort of falling into that trap of, I've got something set up, I've got the fundamentals in place, which is a good starting point, obviously. But then as the businesses grow, you see some of them grow within a year or 2 years from, say, 10 employees, like 100 employees, and the infrastructure is not in place.
Yeah.
From an employment law side of things.
Yeah.
And then that creates more issues down the line of tribunal claims, and which ultimately will cost the business money if the handbooks and the contracts haven't been updated.
100%, yeah. And of course, after 2 years service, an employee can bring in a claim for unfair dismissal. So it's ensuring that you follow the correct process from an employment law perspective as well, which is all normally covered in a handbook in terms of what that process should look like. But we do see that one of the major pitfalls is when an employee is post 2 years employment, an employer unfortunately hasn't followed the process. It could be that there's a redundancy situation looming, but actually no process has been followed because they're under the impression they can just let the employee go. But a redundancy process would need to be followed, and any other process, if it's to do with capability, performance, you do need to ensure that there is a tight process.
And it can be really tricky for employers because you see, like, for example, with sickness absences, and it's that fine line between, of course, they want to support their employees and they should support their employees, but then also they need to make sure the business can still run. And for startups, when you've got, usually less staff, it's sort of trying to find that fine balance. And sometimes we see startups sort of jumping the gun and just sort of dismissing someone without realizing the legal repercussions. And then obviously when that person brings a claim, then they're not only trying to develop their startup, they're tackling this legal claim as well. And it becomes a huge nightmare situation that, to be honest, it can cripple a startup, the legal fees and the actual cost of losing at the tribunal if it goes that far. Big problems.
Yeah, and I think what we see is quite a lot of benefit. We're providing a retention function for clients where they come to us and they get the HR and employment law covered on a monthly retainer, which means they come to us for any advice that they need in any eventuality, and we're always available. In terms of a benefit for a startup, how have we found that for startups and businesses that are like progressing into, say, stage 3, year 5 of their businesses?
I think you're just having that relationship with someone that you trust as an advisor, so you know that you're getting good quality advice, which we provide, and then you're working with someone that really understands the ins and outs of your business. I mean, the retainer clients we work with, we've got such a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
It's almost like, in a way, they've become sort of like friends, because we've got such a good relationship with them.
And they see us like in-house counsel.
Yeah, and we literally, they can call us, message us in the morning, and know they'll get a response in the same day. and they know that they're going to get the advice that they need. And it's also tailoring that advice to meet the needs of the business. You've got some businesses that want to take a more cautious approach, and obviously we know that. And we've got some that want to take a firmer approach and sort of set the standard. And of course, we know how to deal with that as well. So it's sort of tailoring. Again, you mentioned bespoke advice and bespoke policies, but it's bespoke advice to meet the needs of that specific business and how they want to be run.
Yeah, and we're not a call centre, so they always come through to an advisor and get the same advisor where possible on every occasion. So then you build that relationship. I think there's been times you've been invited to like the summer party. So it's building that relationship, which means that they feel comfortable coming to us with any issue that they have, and they know that they'll be supported.
Yeah. Again, going back to your point, just having that fee earner, one fee earner for that business, depending on, of course, the business size, you may need two, but you know, that's so important to have. Imagine having several fee earners on one business, and you know they're not aware of kind of the wants and needs of that business, and they're not fully aware of what's been going on. So I think that's something that's so unique to us as a firm, what we offer. Just having that main person that you can rely on, and that will respond to your emails, that will deal with situations. And I think, you know, investing into kind of HR, especially going through a litigation process,
it's costly.
It's very costly, you know, for a basic claim, let's say unfair dismissal. If it goes all the way to the tribunal, you are looking at £10,000 to £15,000. So, and that's kind of bare minimum as well. So I think it's so important to have that in place to avoid any kind of tribunal claims.
It's also the emotional side of things as well, which people don't realise, that the stress that tribunal has on people.
So stressful,
that you think that, it's a simple process because it's designed to be sort of easy access for the public, but ultimately you still we speak to so many people that have sleepless nights about it. And I think a lot of the clients that we see or we speak to, they've come after having a bad experience at the tribunal, whether it's at their existing business or a previous business or them personally. And it shouldn't be that, okay, you've had a bad experience and then you seek legal advice. It should just be,
be more proactive beforehand.
100%. Ideally, be proactive, get in front of the problems before they start to arise, because once you've had that bad experience, you're always going to get legal advice. It's just the steps that you do before that bad experience happens.
Also,
foundation.
Foundation. And it is costly, expensive, and it's most probably going to take away those early years of a business owner's life, because they were going to get really stressed, paying out legal fees at a very high hourly rate then at that stage, because they didn't seek the initial advice. And they're trying to build a business, which it's going to take that time away from.
It's hard enough in itself. Let alone worrying about legal claims and stuff like that.
100%. So I think it's making sure you've got that in place to start with, and then the worry is taken away from you because you're giving it to the legal professionals from the start. Is there anything else that we see most common with some of our business clients, especially in the startup phase?
I think, we spoke about it earlier, but I think definitely the contracts is such a big one.
What about with value? So like what we sometimes see is when business owners come to us in the initial stages, they may have not aligned their values and culture within the team. But actually, I think it's really important is to be able to have that alignment session with your own team, even if it's just you and one other person that you take on. It's only you and one other employee, having that kind of very open conversation of what your values are and what the culture is that you'd like to create, which I think is really important, because then that's embodied in when you then take on more people.
And I think, again, I know we keep speaking about the contracts and handbooks, but that can very easily be, and it should be in the contracts and especially the handbook, the values. And I think we've done it both ways in the past, where we've had startups that have come to us and they've wanted their values in initially, sort of in the handbook, almost on the first page, with sort of explaining how the business was founded, why it was founded, the core values. And then we've had other businesses where it's been more that they've sort of thought, let me get the foundations in place, then I'll impose my values on all the various employees that we have. And it always works better when they do it in the first place. And
it avoids more mistakes.
It flows through the business, and then employees understand you you can speak about us as a firm, to be honest.
Yeah.
We all know what the values of the firm are because they've been drilled into us from the beginning of this is how we should be. And it's the right way ultimately. And that's why we all share the same value as a team.
Yeah.
All of us, we all sort of move in sync, which is really nice as well as a legal team to have that.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes I'll speak to Suraj, who's not here today, but he'll speak to each of us individually, and he'll get the same advice from all 3-4 of us.
Yeah. Because it's the values and the culture piece that goes behind it. But I think that's most probably really important as a business develops or expands, is making sure you know what your values are. Sometimes we can enter into opening a business, but we don't know what our values are to start with, and that's absolutely fine. But it's making sure that you know those so that you can embody that culture within the firm as well.
Yeah, and it can be communicated not only to employees but to customers and clients as well. I think that's a key thing, because that's how you get, ultimately, that's how people come back to you as a business, don't they? When they understand that you really value them and
it
you
builds
are what
that
you stand for.
employee morale, and you feel good when you come to work.
Definitely.
That there's a foundation. If you're confused about something, refer to a policy. Having that relationship. And to be honest with you, even when we look at policies, so for example, let's say a situation that's not as frequent, like let's say bereavement, and having that policy in place, and even if it's a couple of days of unpaid leave, just having that in place, and for the employee to be like, okay, I'm able to take that time off. My company does support me. Small things like that, I think, makes such a massive difference.
100%.
And again, that retention is a lot less as well. So
it takes away the uncertainty and the anxiety that the person may have. And sometimes what you find is employees and teams don't really want to ask their manager the question. They feel like sometimes they can't ask the question of what's the policy for this. But if you've already provided the policy or handbook, that avoids that type of feeling for the employee as well, the anxiety, the unknown, what to do in that situation. Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys, for joining me today on our first podcast. That's all from us. So today we talked about the importance of employee contracts, handbooks, and the biggest pitfalls that we've experienced for new startups. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much. That's Anita Kalra.